This podcast was recorded on March 22nd, 2022. Hello, ladies, gentlemen, and people outside the binary. Broken Class is back in session. I'm your discussion leader, Thomas Huda. What a pleasure it is to have my good friend, well, not somebody I've spent a lot of time with before, but I feel a strong kinship with because of our common interest in the performing arts community here in Eugene and Lane County and historical Kalapuya Ilihi. This is Benny Cosmic, y'all. How you doing, Benny?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me, Tom. Thomas. Do you prefer Tom or Thomas?
I'm probably more into the Thomas, but I don't mind Tommy and I don't mind Tom.
All right. How about T Supreme?
T Supreme. That sounds like a Taco Bell item.
Thomas it is, then.
Yeah. I better be worth more than the cheesy gordita crunch,
Yes,
though. That's all I'm saying.
Definitely.
Cool. Well, we're already going to just kick it off with the first question of the show.
Right on.
What's a controversial opinion that you hold about anything?
I think Nicolas Cage is a bad actor.
Oh, have you even seen Raising Arizona?
Yes, I've had this debate many times. Nicolas Cage just plays himself, and he puts on some sort of weird costume. he's not acting; he's just himself with the costume.
Every role is something he sincerely just wants to be doing.
He doesn't
even know it's fiction. He thinks it's a documentary.
Well,
he's like, we're gonna steal the Declaration of Independence.
They're like, Nick, we're gonna put a pin on that. Definitely a great movie idea. Great movie idea. We're gonna do that. We're not gonna steal it. We're gonna make a movie.
All right, I love it. I love it. I like the way that people interpret controversy differently. Because some people might take it to a really deep place.
Oh, I was thinking about it, but I was like, this is the first thing that came to mind.
Yeah.
I usually go with that. My gut feeling was like, let people know what you think about Nicolas Cage.
But isn't it also kind of accepted that he's like the kind of so bad it's good, kind of like Keanu
he became
Reeves?
like a meme for he's like the internet meme right now. And I just saw there's a movie where he's playing himself. And
really?
Yeah.
Right.
I saw a trailer for it.
That.
Yeah. It's like the unmeasurable weight of immense talent. Which exactly right. That's a grotesque name in itself. Pretty self-indulgent, I would say. But
it reminds me a little bit of, and I respond to this quite differently with Weird Al. Has this for the second time he's going out on a tour called like the ridiculously ill-advised self-indulgent vanity tour.
Oh my goodness.
It might even be something along that.
That is
because he's doing no parodies.
Name.
He's doing almost no parodies, and that's what he's known for.
Yeah.
But he also
does he actually make like his own songs though?
He has songs that he actually makes that are silly, and often they're really complex and 8 minutes, like Jackson Park Express.
So kind of like a Frank Zappa kind of vibe, or
very much so. I think that I don't think you get Weird Al without Zappa.
Fair. I can see that. Yeah, I can see like the Succession.
Yeah, exactly. In a lot of ways. That's cool. I didn't think you'd bring up rest in peace, Frank Zappa.
Yeah, man.
His daughter's name is Moon Unit.
What?
Yeah, his daughter's name is. He has a daughter named Moon Unit. He's got a son named Dweezil.
I would be friends with Dweezil.
Yeah.
Maybe Moon Unit too, depending on how cool they are.
Is in Austin Powers 2 is the one I believe where it might be 3, but like Dr. Evil's on the moon. And have you seen these movies?
Yes, of course.
Right, and he's basically got he's basically got like this laser. He's trying to shoot that Earth from the lasers, and he basically says like, we've engaged with all of the prototypes and all of the blueprints from Moon Unit Alpha to Moon Unit Zappa. Which is
nice.
just like a dumb little reference.
That is a great reference. So now that I know, that is perfect. I gotta I've made it a point to like rewatch a lot of movies I saw as a kid.
Nice.
As I'm older. The first to see if they hold up now that I'm older, and secondly to just catch references I didn't catch the first time around, like that. Like if I would have watched them, like Moon Unit Zappa, I'm like, oh my goodness, that is genius. Like, who was the writer on that?
Well, before we get too carried away into all the things that I think we could enthusiastically talk about, just let's give people a background about you within the community. You have been the host of a radio show with KEPW, Eugene Peace Works Radio. And you also are really, in my heart and in my mind, known as a very dynamic live performer of original music.
Thank you.
That is hip-hop in nature, but also encompasses funk, soul, R&B, and to whatever extent you even really accept those labels. I think that you do a great job of exploring what makes music beautiful from all those different domains. So, how'd you get into it?
Just music in general?
Yeah.
I would say it was my grandmother, who I call Nana. She was yeah, man, like I went to like a lot of like churches and stuff like that when I was little, and she used to get me like singing in church, and eventually she got me in choir. And then I stopped going to church, and then I just started singing on my own. And then she was like, "Oh, you're a good singer. Keep singing, keep it up." And I would just be like, "Okay, yeah." I didn't really think of anything of it. And then eventually, other people started telling me I was good at it because, like, my whole thing was like, "Oh yeah, of course, my grandma's gonna say I'm a good singer. She's my grandma, you know." So I was like, yeah. Until other people started saying it who didn't have any reason to say it, I was like, oh wow, okay, I guess I can actually do this then, because public is usually your hardest critic.
Right. Yeah. And when that was happening and going to all those churches and whatnot, was that around in our current area here, or was that elsewhere?
Oh, no. So, I grew up a lot of like different places, mostly SoCal, but like just a bunch of different cities in SoCal. Cool. I moved around a lot.
When did you come out here?
I would say, let's see, it's 2022 now. So about 6 years I've been out here.
Nice.
Yeah, just about. Yeah. It might be 7 coming up this August. Yeah, but I came out here when I was like 19, man. I was like, I need to go somewhere where I'm far enough away from my family where they can't just randomly pull up on me.
Respect that.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, I'm the eldest. They depended on me for a lot, so I needed my own life. I decided to come up here just because I really always liked trees, and there's a lot of nature out here. And then, yeah, weed was legal, dude. I was just like, those are the kind of things I was looking for at 19, I guess. I was like,
right.
I need a freedom far enough away to come home when I want to, but not have home come to me. And then kind of just have the freedom to, do stuff without being worried.
Yeah, I grew up around here, and I definitely had the experience of a lot of my friends who went to college. They went to OSU, and they didn't go to University of Oregon. Not because University of Oregon isn't just as wonderful a school as OSU, but because staying in the exact same spot, just that 45-minute buffer. I mean, it will not effectively prevent the tiger parent who's determined to come and ambush you.
But it gives you at least 45 minutes.
Yeah, and then if you hear they're coming, you can at least skirt to like Salem or something and be like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I was out at dinner.
I was doing something." Yeah.
The reason I asked if it was around here or not is because when you're talking about that feedback people will give you, people will really bullshit you around here.
Yeah,
They will. I found it very refreshing when a friend of mine, who I'm not that close with, he's actually a lot closer with my roommate Grief, but he's also a musician, and he attended the Proto-Synthesis show, and we could talk about that a little bit if you want, but we don't have to get into anything in particular. And basically after my set, I was gassed up. I felt great. I rocked for like 50 people, and I had a little solid crowd of people who were really dancing and vibing with it. And so I felt good, even though I put a lot of density lyrically into my stuff and I'd get winded. But I still felt good about how it went. And everybody was very, it feels good to get off stage and get your love. And I got that. But then this one gentleman also told me what he thought was whack. And yes, it will stick in your mind more. And that can sometimes be like, at the end of the night, you're like, am I whack? But like, that's part of being an artist in general. And it's much better to have honesty.
Well, yeah, I mean, how else are you going to be better? I'd rather be in a room full of no's than a room full of yeses.
Right.
Because like I'll make a yes for myself. I can't make a no for myself. That's just something I've made a promise. I don't talk negatively about myself in any way. I don't put myself down.
Beautiful.
That's just something. And like I feel like the way I treat myself trickles into others. So like I don't do that to other people. Like I have people who are always like, those folks who say something like, "Oh, I'm so XYZ," or "Oh, I'm so negative this."
Right.
Whenever they're doing that, I'm like, no, I don't think that. You're saying that, but I don't think that. And they usually just look at me and they don't want to argue because like you're gonna argue against someone trying to bring you up. And, right. So like even when it comes to that though, like when I perform, I get the most feedback I usually get is usually stuff that's like stuff that I know. But it's more reaffirming in the stuff like you usually have a hunch on what you could work on as an individual.
Totally.
And so like usually the feedback I get is reaffirming of the hunch I had. So like for instance, one time when I was like first starting off, my whole thing was I didn't know that it was better if I was trying to rap along my lyrics of my song, basically just doing like lip syncing type situation. And then this older head was like, hey man, you're a really great performer, but it'd be better if you weren't lip syncing and you were actually just rapping your stuff so people know that you actually recorded it instead of just punching in. That'll gain a lot of respect with older heads. And at the time I was like, whatever, man, I don't need to hear nothing from you. You're coming on after me.
Yeah.
And like that kind of like ego from a young man. So like with that, I was just like, I took it with the grain of salt that I did, and you know, I made something spicy with it. So
a little cayenne.
Yeah, you know, I threw it in there. But so now, you know, I make it a point to like be able to perform my stuff live, even without an instrumental. I can do it a cappella if the beat cuts off, you know, and still bring that energy where like I've had shows where the sound system just cuts off and I just keep rapping and I clap the tempo and people will join in and clap, and like I'll keep it going like that. And then even more recently, this, not the Proto-Synthesis show, but I did a show at the Big Dirty a while back where the only feedback I got was from like the bartender. He was like, the only thing you're missing is a live band. Like if you got a live band that would match your energy, and I'm like, that's perfect, yeah, because then they could just write off what I'm doing. Yes. But that's more so along the lines of like that takes scheduling and a whole lot of money, because I prefer to pay people who are, you know, playing for me, you know. Beautiful. So that's just kind of how I am with that. Nice. But it's definitely something I've already thought about, you know, in the sense of like, how great would it be if I had just a group of people who I can be like, all right, hey, when I'm doing this move here, just play for like 10 counts, you know, and then I'll come in on the you know, on the 12th count, and then we'll pick up. Yeah,
Chuck Berry used to lead his band just by tapping his foot.
Exactly, you know? Right? Or like people like Parliament. Parliament is like my favorite performers, because I watched a video of them where one of their bass guitarists is literally like floating sideways, like like they hooked up like some sort of like strings to his ankles with like basically like little hatches or satchels or whatever. Wow, that's not the right word, but sure, like there's some sort of buckles, and they had like a thin wire, basically how they use it in like action films, and they had him floating sideways while playing bass, and like there's footage of this, and like they would do crazy stuff. And that's the thing I think is missing in like modern artistry is a showmanship. Wow. I think like pageantry and showmanship is right now, it's just like, I do enough dances as I do in the music video on stage, and everybody already knows my lyrics, so I don't really have to do anything. I don't have to give back to the people because they already gave it all to me. That's kind of the energy I get. No,
for sure. I mean, if you see, it's a rare sight to see like a solo MC like having a whole room of 100+ people on there, like hanging with every note, because it is hard to bring that performance value up. People don't invest the time and energy to really do that. Whereas if you got a big band, 8, 9, 10 people, it's uncommon to have nobody rocking with it.
Because there's so much energy. Yeah, exactly. It's already there.
Exactly.
It's like it's like with the band, I feel like you just have to you just have to plug in. Whereas with the solo artist, what you have to do is you're basically it's like an alternating current, you know, AC/DC motor. It's like it's back and forth. I give you some, you give me some. We keep this energy going. With a band though, you already got a fully charged battery. People just have to plug in. And then they can just, you know, they don't have to use as much energy to get themselves going because the band is already going.
You know what else too? Every damn show mostly that I've done in my life, I've been my own. I wouldn't call it DJ because I'm playing my tracks off my laptop or my phone, but so
essentially that's the thing, though.
Exactly. And I'll tell you, I think we might agree that like, okay, those times when the sound shuts down and you got to rock a cappella or whatever, actually can be more liberating because.
No, I'm not confined to this time. I'm not to this time signature. I can do whatever.
Especially, if you got a DJ, maybe he could fuck with it live or something, or like run some shit back. Or if you're with a band, let's say you forget a bar and you just like
you can shoot them a look or something.
Yeah,
like,
you can improvise and get people to do a crowd participation. Or I ended songs in my recent set with I got about 80% through the song and I wasn't. I didn't feel like finishing it, and so I just said, make some fucking noise for yourselves or whatever.
Yeah, I was like, yeah,
exactly. I love live music because you can pick up tricks of the trade from people of so many different genres and incorporate them into what you do. I'd love for people to hear that you have a new album out. I am very much a fan of it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Tell the people the name.
Good Vibes, Hood Tribes, brought to you by a bunch of great producers. I'm just the vessel in which I speak the stuff they make.
So the opposite of me. I'm like sitting in here night and day, like, this is my project. I'm going to do every element of this. And when it comes out, it's going to be exceptional. And
see, dude, I do that. And then my friends are just like, that, dude, you've been sitting on this for 2 years. Put it out now. Because, like, that album, I went with 9 tracks, but in the process of making that album, I have like 45. So like what I did was I had all of my like teammates and people I make music with and I respect their opinions. I had them all listen to it, and that's probably the biggest ask I've asked of anybody like recently is like listen to 45 songs of mine and pick 9 of them that are the best. Yeah. You know, that's a big ask because that's each song is like 2 minutes. That's like an hour, at least 2 hours of someone's time. So after everybody took the time to do that, I had like at least 20 people give me their 9, and then I looked at all of their opinions and I had my own kind of sense of what I wanted on the project and what I wanted to go, and I just picked and chose the best ones and the ones that seemed thematic in the right way. And the idea of that was like I mean, duality at its like core elements, you know, on the basis of it, but it's more so kind of how I interpret life is the good vibes is like no matter what's happening, I'm gonna be in a good disposition about it, you know, like I'm gonna make a way into how it's beneficial for me. And then the Hood Tribes is just like, I think that's more so just a recalling of my upbringing, because you know, growing up in San Bernardino and just being of an indigenous descent, those two things were kind of mixed together to be kind of a the perfect concoction for being a hot-blooded individual in the desert. So it's just always being prone to violence and being quick-tempered just because that's what you're conditioned to do. So the idea was finding a mix between those.
Wow. You know, Zappa has a song about San Bernardino.
Does he really?
It's called San Bernardino. Yeah.
What?
And it's more of
I'm liking this guy more and more.
Oh, respect, dude. Well, it's not truly about the city. It's more of a story of a guy named...
he's like a Saint Bernard.
No, but he's from there, or he's living there. It's not very friendly to the city, to the town.
Oh, yeah, the city's not friendly to anybody.
Yeah, exactly. And it starts out and it says, he lives in Mojave in a Winnebago.
That sounds right.
His name is Bobby. He looks like a potato. And at the end he goes, oh, Bobby, I'm sorry you got to hear about the potato. I really am.
That's
but it's
funny.
The whole refrain at the end is like, they'll spend the rest of their lives in San Bernardino.
Yep.
Which feels a little like
it's
something people say about...
else.
Well, it feels like something people say about Eugene, too, is like, oh, he's born here and he's going to die here. Or whatever.
Yeah, but, that's part of the reason why I moved, because I read in a book, it was, you know, some rich guy wrote a book and I decided to read it. I'm not, you know, like, I'm not going to shout their name out because they already make enough money.
Right.
But, like, basically, the paraphrasing is that, you know, you can't find success in the city you grew up in because your worst supporters are always... You know, your people who know you your whole life, you know, people who know you since grade school, they're like, oh, you're not going to amount to anything because I came from the same upbringing as you. And if you're doing it and I'm not doing it, then I'm either mad at you, happy, or jealous, you know? Like, and I wish I could say there was no other way of that, but that's just human nature, you know?
And if you come out like, you know, swinging for the fences in your home community, like, you will get maybe a little love at first, I think, too. But like once people are like used to it, the standard they hold you to is often like not very reasonable. And there's something to be said about having like when I lived in New York, oh my gosh, I lived there for 9 months. And the best thing that I could ever do for my mental health, because I was living in like a dorm building where I couldn't play music, was to buy an acoustic guitar for $99, go to the subway platforms and play on the subway platforms. And it was so insanely like there were times when it was going, well, I'd make $15 an hour just from busking. And it was like, if you go to the rail in like peak hours, you can see on the little like digital sign, it's like, okay, there's one coming, the one train's coming in 4 minutes and 11 minutes. and 16 minutes. So I literally, like, getting back into the spirit of live music and playing these covers, like these Weezer and Stone Temple Pilots and Beatles songs. Like, I only had a repertoire of 3, maybe 4 decent songs. Didn't matter at all because the audience was constantly cycling. And so I got so much, like, good energy, and you got people that didn't give a shit, and that's fine. That's good. But I just really enjoyed, like, being able to have authentic connections with people, like, even in a city where people really tend to have their face down and not really, like, you know,
not stick their neck out.
Right, exactly. So yeah, no, there's something really to be said about that, because sometimes those hometown people, like, they'll be the first people to be like, when you see them at the grocery store, they'll be like, oh my gosh, and you got the album out, wow, cool. But, like, they're not listening to it. They're not.
Man, I don't blame
people, because I don't want to presume, like, hey, this thing that I'm working on, like, this is my 8th studio album. Like, you need to care about this. It's like, I'm very much in the camp of you need to make people care. You can't spend a second of time just pitying yourself because people don't care.
Well, it's like, I mean, it's just the same thing as, like, I mean, any other piece of art is, what's the story behind it? Why do people care about it? Like, and this is something I'm more realizing recently with, I went to this Beyond Van Gogh exhibit out there in Portland.
Cool.
Where they just take his life's work and project it on, like, crazy digital art. It's really awesome. It's like a projector setup. It's like a live art show. But they had through each installment, they had, like, excerpts of his life stories and, like, letters he would write to his brother.
Word.
But all of that takeaway I took from it was, like, I didn't care about Van Gogh at all before I went. Like, I just went because I thought it'd be a great date, you know? And I went, and then I learned about this artist, and I was like, yo, wait, what? So you're telling me he was going crazy and his little brother supported him the whole time? And this is why, I learned that all of his paintings were just his visions from when he was staring out a window of whatever asylum he was in.
Really?
And, yeah.
Wow.
So, like, knowing that story, I was like, yo, wait, what? This guy's crazy awesome.
I think it goes in a little bit to, we should know more about those things, but mental health has historically not been worth discussing, because people get the idea that by bringing it up, you're somehow causing more discomfort than you are ameliorating trauma or alleviating tension. Like, I totally believe in bringing it up. I totally admire and appreciate that in many, many facets of society, and I would say across the political spectrum too. Like, people are understanding that sometimes life's really hard, and it's hard to get out of your own fucking way. That's true for me, big time. Is being, and I don't want to be too of the individualistic, meritocratic kind of, like, well, if something's going bad in your life, it's just your fault, and, you know. I like that for the people listening on audio. He's doing, like, a little walk, like, with his arms, like,
my name's Jeffrey, I'm gonna bootstrap it up because nothing affects me ever.
Joe the plumber, who and so it's interesting to think about, but I want to get into the content of your album as well, because you start off right off the rip with Shadow Boxing. One of my favorite tracks is Nickel and Dime.
Yeah,
is it Nickel and Dime or Nickel and Dime?
Nickel and Dime. Yeah,
Nickel and Dime is a really good one. And then there's the one, I don't remember the exact name of it, but I think it's like Redskin
Bandit.
Bandit. I was gonna say Yeah, and so I think I'm amazed to see that it was whittled down from 45 tracks, because I understand when I listen to it that okay, all of these were top echelon tracks. Like, now that I hear that, I'm like, that makes sense.
Yeah, like, I wanted the cream of the crop. I was like, let me shave off the fat. After I shave off the fat, let me cut it into sushi slices. What's the best sushi slice?
Yes. Yeah. I like that. Yeah. But I feel that it's a hostile album. And is that an okay descriptor to make of it?
No, that's perfect.
You're addressing.
I wanted to be evocative.
Yeah.
I like, the idea was that the instrumentation I chose was something that you can hear in any life setting. Something calming enough that you could hear it whatever you were doing and not be thrown off by it.
It's not jarring or disruptive.
Yeah, but the lyrical content,
it's piercing.
It's like this is what I'm saying, hear me. And if you don't hear me, play that shit again and listen again. And so Shadowboxing is kind of Shadowboxing was actually the first song on the album that made me was like, this is where the album's gonna go.
Cool.
Because my friend, the non-existent prophet, that's the producer name he goes with, he made this instrumental, and he had just found, like, he had just reached out to somebody and got the sample for that cello that you hear is like boom, 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 that bass line.
The melodies are the top
yeah,
of it too.
like, he did that, and he laid it down, and what me and him do is, like, he'll make the beat, I'll freestyle on it, and then we'll go back and forth, dissect and rearrange it how we need to. So when he did that, I was, like, trying to come up with the hook, and I was, like, shadowboxing, because I heard that term. I was watching like the new Wu-Tang doc, like the biopic series they have on Hulu. I was watching that when it first came out.
I gotta check that out.
And they were talking about the art of chess boxing, and I was like, chess boxing, and then I was watching a lot of fighting stuff, and I learned about what shadowboxing was, and I was like, shadowboxing, everybody fighting demons, and I was like, that set it off, and I was like, what goes with that? And I was like, light what I incite, you can't deny you see it. And those lyrics are like, people have always told me that I bring a brightness to their life, or I'm always seeing on the bright side. So it's like, that's just something I do. You can't deny you see that. Right. I'll dive in, food for thought provided while the speaker's beating, and that one's like, here's my intention. Like, I want you to think while this music is going. And it's like, so I'll dive into your mind and I'll pull you out the deep end. And that's like, you know, that can be left to interpretation. But my intention was, you know, if you're feeling down, play this song, and hopefully I can lift you up with this song. And if not, play it again, and you got other songs to listen to, you know? And so the first verse is about, first verse is about me, my internal dialogue, where it's like, hippo, camo, apple, trapped inside your temple, active camo, how you handle the way that you want to see this. That's basically me saying hippocampo is like your memories. So it's like looking back on your memories, choosing how you want to see your past is what's going to make you move forward. So temporal battles in the shadows made you handle all the way you want to see this. From the consciousness that you swear you're streaming, because everybody claims to be conscious or woke, right? So I was like, so who am I but these human eyes? That's me admitting my immortality, forced to describe why I live this life. We're all searching for our meaning. So is there no one left to get it right? Angels falling from the sky. No wonder why we crave the high of breaking through glass ceilings. And so the hook comes back in, where the idea is like introspective into basically realizing my role in society at that point in time. And then the second verse is basically, I'm back from the void to destroy this destroyer. That's after like my dark night of the soul.
Love that.
And then the third verse is essentially like me realizing that who I am and what I can bring, but also accepting the consequences and repercussions of that. So the third verse starts off with the brightest lights cast the darkest shadows. Which is pretty self-evident if you know that metaphor. Where it's like, Cassius dodged the draft but was still caught up in their battles. Christ didn't want their cash, so they lashed him like some cattle. Took his message and then taught the peasants how to settle. That's too damn falsetto, but truth ain't no riddle. I'm too smart to give up like Malcolm in the Middle. And the idea is that we're always in the middle of some BS, and we're always all smart. We know what's going on, but nobody's doing anything yet. It still perseveres. Right. So that one is kind of just holding on to
we have there's a toxic tendency to assume that being informed about something is like the start and end of how much you should engage with it.
Right.
Like I'm informed about it. I'm informed about it. It's like, it almost feels like a very Portlandy kind of like, oh yes, like I read the Atlantic article and the New Republic article about this. I might have even chipped into the change.org or whatever, you know.
Okay, but what did you do?
Yeah, really.
And that's kind of like the feeling on that. And then what was the other one? Nickel and dime.
Dude, I feel like I'm getting the honorable role of being genius.com here, allowing you to really talk about. Well, honestly, let me say real quick too, because I want to hear about nickel and dime. But I personally, you know, my craft is lyricism. I don't do a lot of making of beats. I often don't even put that much melody into what I do. But I put my vocal up front in the mix typically, and I've been really trying to see the appeal and the value of dialing it back and letting it sit comfortably in the mix so that people can hear all the other shit going on in the track. That's something you have down to a T with your project, and that's why, honestly, I'll say that as you're telling me these lyrics, I'm like, oh, I recognize the patterns and the flows, but I didn't know that's exactly what you were saying.
You got to really hear it. Yeah,
and that's what pulls people in. It's like I'm reminded of this stupid thing when I was in like middle school. We went to Mount St. Helens. Me and my friend Sean Collum, and his grandma was like, you gotta hear some cologne. It's your birthday. Just put on a little bit, so the girls have to get close to you.
So they can sense it. Yeah, you know that just a little bit, a little dab will do you, man.
Right.
But no, that was actually a really hard part of it because my whole camp of everyone I was working with. Like the final mix of the album, there was probably like 7. Like after I found out the final 9, I mixed those down 7 times and I sent them off to everybody each time. It was like, is this it? Is this it? And like, you know, shout out to them because I'm very peculiar and like particular about my sound. So they bared with me through the whole process. But eventually,
do you want to name any names?
Oh yeah, I mean, there's Cruiser Uramesh. You know, he knows who he is. He's doing his thing out there.
Beautiful.
I got lavishly posted. I got the non-existent prophet. I got Julian Outlaw, you know, he peeped the album, and I got Romy Visions. That's like another like bunch of people that helped me out.
Wonderful.
And I love you guys for it. But yeah, man, like after the like 7th, the final time where I was like, no, this sounds good. I took everyone's final feedback and nobody was like, this is the sound. Like, cause everybody wanted me to put my lyrics more like loud and everything. And I was like, yeah, I'll do that for some songs, but some songs I'm not going to. Like, I really took the time to do more of the dynamics of the sound. Like I watched this thing by, what's his name? Paul Gibson. He's like grandson of whoever made the Gibson guitars.
Okay.
But there's this video he has on YouTube called The Art of Mixing. It's like 2 hours, but it's a really great video about just mixing in general. But it has this program called, I don't know what they call the program, but it's a 3D imaging program where it allows you to, while they're playing the sounds for you, it shows you where the sounds are supposed to appear in between the left and right speakers. And it's a really...
Word.
Yeah, and it really helped me with like visualizing my production. And then that was like a real big part of it, is I wanted to create mental images for people when they listened, because when I close my eyes, I usually see like colors with my eyes closed, and I'll see shapes with them. And like I'll like more recently...
Do you have synesthesia, or is it just kind
I don't believe so. No. Right. Like ever since I was little, I've been able to do this. So I don't know if it's actually synesthesia or anything like that. But like when, you know, like the way I equate it is to like, let's say for some reason you're looking at a light or the sun for too long, and you close your eyes and you see that residual color, right?
Yeah.
So it's similar to that, except I don't have to look at a source of light for it.
Yeah.
And like I'll just close my eyes and I'll kind of just see them. And then more recently, I've been trying to use whatever colors I see and try to form them into like shapes. And I've found that it's easier to do that when I'm listening to music.
Beautiful.
So with that, I've been like, what kind of music stimulates different kind of colors or like different kind of patterns? And after diving into like somatics and like a little bit of sound geometry, I learned that sine waves are usually great for like more truncated shapes like squares, rectangles, triangles, etc. But using all that knowledge and then putting into the production, what I went and did was I overhauled all of my production and went back with all my new knowledge, because essentially each mix was like me learning something, going back and applying it, and rinse and repeating.
Right.
So when I got to this final step, I was like, no, this hits all the marks.
Right.
I was just like, no, I can't. I literally listened until I myself couldn't find anything wrong with it. I was just like, no, this is all right.
What a great feeling.
I was just like, this is all, I can't argue with myself about this. So I guess
there's
this
a
is
lot
good.
of musicality to it.
Yeah, I was like, this is just there.
Can I say that, as my voice cracks, one thing I love about hip-hop and about our little community here of people who do hip-hop is, to me, it feels as though there are so many different points of entry into how one would become a participant in hip-hop. Not even as an artist, but as a supporter or as a lover of the scene or the culture.
Yeah.
Exactly. And sometimes you get people who I think, like, for example... Oh, what a silly mainstream example, but like, okay, like Lil Yachty has come under fire in the past for basically saying I can't name any Tupac songs or any Biggie songs. So it's like, well, you want to have a little bit more of an understanding of the history that you're resting on the foundation of. But in general, for the most part, other than that,
giants whose shoulders you're standing on.
Yeah, but other than that kind of thing, I think there's so many like valid ways to be like, oh, I came into hip hop through I don't know, stuff that I wouldn't care for, like Macklemore necessarily or something like, and then maybe you deepen it and you get to Mac Miller and then you get to OutKast or whatever, like,
yeah, you just kind of follow that vein of sound.
Yeah, or you could be someone who liked Aerosmith and then Run DMC came along and then that you know, and then you like Bomb Squad or Run the Jewels because there's more rock energy or something. Like I really like hearing about how, because hip hop as a genre obviously started where they turned the playback device into an instrument because that's what they had. That's what they had to work with. And so they turned the turntable into the instrument, then they did two of them and then looped them up. And then the MC was just somebody hyping up the DJ. And then it evolved to where the MC is the spotlight and brings lyricism and flow and poeticism. And I'm a big fan of seeing how trying to go to like an artist's like set and listening deeply and being like, oh, it sounds like they were rocking some J. Cole. Like before, you know,
yeah,
like,
you can hear the influences once you dive deep enough in the music. That's all.
And I like being wrong. I check in with them later and be like, "Oh, you sounded like you've been listening to like I don't know, like Tierra Whack," and they'll be like, "Who's that?" You know, it's like, "Oh, cool." Like,
well, you might like this artist.
Yeah, exactly. Tell me about Nickel and Dime, because what I get out of it is you know, at every step, every move in society, we're necessarily trying to take care of ourselves and our lives, and the government's always finding ways to fucking
pretty much nickel and dime us. Yeah, man, that's like right on the money, man.
Yeah.
Like I made that song right when the quarantine, like the first like COVID like lockdown, everything shut down. Everyone went to go buy toilet paper, all that crazy stuff for the first 2 weeks of the 24-hour news cycle.
What a crazy year this is! This is already for music releases. Like everybody's dropping what they made.
Yeah, and like it feels good that there's, because we were in a drought for a bit, on, you know, understandably so.
Yeah.
But yeah, that song came out and I was just like, what am I gonna write about? Because I just received this beat and it was like, honestly, I'm more prone to rapping. Like if people listen to my older stuff, I rap quicker, I rap faster, and like it's more yell in your face. Like I want to get people dancing and turning up. Whereas I just received this instrumental for Nickel and Dime and it was like completely opposite. It was like I need to sit down, think about what I'm really gonna say, and like if people are gonna listen to me at this capacity, what is it that I really want to do with this? You know, this energy. And so I was just like, how do I feel in this? The instrumental at the time felt like how I felt about the whole situation of quarantine and all that. So the lyrics were like, in quarantine, feeling like a war machine, dressed in all black to make a killing. Yes, I'm flourishing. And it's like, and that one just in itself is like me kind of like dressing all black because I was low-key depressed about the whole situation. I had a bunch of plans set on side like everybody else, I'm sure, you know.
Oof.
And it's like feeling like a war machine. Like
I was gonna make.
Yeah, see, like there was plans that were put on hold.
Yeah.
I was like dressing all black to make a killing. Yes, I'm flourishing. And that one's more like the idea of also owning into how America's treating all of that, you know. Is like, and then of course I get a little. I basically go. I try to find a nice balance between woke and belligerent, because I feel like that's a good balance that I can meet a lot of the people who would want to listen to my music potentially.
Yeah.
So the next verse is like feeling like a war machine. Bust on your chick, rejuvenator pours again. I whip the foreign like it's Forza Dam, and that's actually a reference to when I had actually gotten hit by a car. That was probably like before I recorded that verse. So I got hit while I was driving by a drunk driver. He T-boned me, and I was like driving a Beamer at the time.
Oof.
And so the lyrics go.
Did he hit the driver's side or passenger
no,
side?
passenger, thankfully. So like I would have been dead otherwise.
Wow.
So it was like
Wow.
The next verse was like,
that's so irresponsible.
Yeah,
PSA,
don't drink and drive. Don't drink and drive. It sucks. You can kill people, including yourself.
I feel like you have to be, because obviously alcohol reduces inhibitions. It has to be such an obvious thing to you that you should never drink and drive, because when you're drunk, you're going to want to look for that excuse. And so anybody who's been affected by that, you know, my thoughts are with you. Like, reach out, because that is a selfish thing to do.
Yeah. So so after that was kind of where the next lyric was like, I just crashed the beam, fuck it, copped a new one, which was more wishful thinking at the time. It's like never.
I love that.
It's like, you know, never losing steam. Word to Frank Schumann, who is the person who created the steam engine.
Sick.
He's like, don't react to everything. Word to Isaac Newton, because he created the idea of everything has a reaction. Or he didn't create it, but he discovered it. Air quotes. It's like, and then.
But
go.
But Newton's the gravity for the most part. But and then Newton was also of course. Sorry.
Thermodynamic reactions.
The 3 laws of motion.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So like one of them is like for every action there's a reaction. So I'm like, don't react to everything or to Isaac Newton. Yeah. And then I make a reference. I'm like, oh, there he go again on his nerdy shit. While hosts stay all around him like my name Copernicus because I
had one back in the day on my first mixtape where I said, if you fuck with me, I don't react like a noble gas.
Nice.
Because like argon and xenon are very non-reactive gases in the periodic table. What's up?
Boom, backpack rap, throwing it back.
Oh yes, backpack rap, absolutely, huh?
That is.
I feel like one of the interesting things is like I kind of came into my love of hip hop without like the backpack rap kind of like I kind of circumvented it through frankly like the big influence for me to love rap was Eminem and then D12. And then from D12, I'm like, okay, they got like Eminem got his style from Nas. And so I never really was into like the like, I don't know, I'm not dissing at all. I don't think it sounds like I am, hopefully, but like the kind of like early to mid 2000s where you had kind of like Lyrics Born and Lafa Taylor around here. And I'm not trying to put Michael K in the past, but like even in our scene back here, it kind of feels like that was like the proto conscious hip hop was like that. And like for example, Mike Shinoda from Linkin Park would basically say stuff like I'm your favorite rapper's favorite rapper, kind of stuff like that. Like this is the hip hop that the hip hop heads love because there was a strong desire to contrast from crunk.
From what was popular, the whole hyphy movement.
Bling, yep.
It's like the ego-driven stuff as opposed to like the id-driven stuff, where it's like this is the underlying stuff that I want to show you, whereas the ego's like, no, this is the shit we have. I'm showing it right to you right now.
And super ego, whatever that is.
I don't know that one. That's why I didn't reference it. I haven't read up enough on that one. It's probably the one I'm ruled by now.
You know what? I've got to be honest with you. I feel very geeked and excited, like because we could talk a little bit about. I don't know if it's just like intellectualism or the ways that our society commodifies, brands, and celebrates certain kinds of knowledge. I think is a really interesting thing. I'm very lucky that I in 2012 received basically like hey, educationally you're set for life. I got a scholarship through the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. That's for they would take 1,000 students of color every year, and I even felt like as a half Japanese person, I barely qualified in a way. Like I got in there and got the scholarship, and in certain fields, the one that interests me most being education, they would fund. They funded a college 4-year undergrad degree anywhere we wanted to go, and then you would have full funding for a master's and then a doctoral program as well. So right now I'm in a master's program online with Southern Oregon, doing a leadership in higher education, Master of Science in Education. And then one thing I'm really excited about, but I also feel very like I always feel kind of conflicted, or at least try to be reflective about this, even talking about it on the podcast and big upping myself, frankly, is to think about like, okay, so like there's a lot of these, I mean, like we could say colonizing and colonial institutions. Like I'm looking into like if I can get a PhD from Harvard, which maybe I could get in, hopefully we'll see, but I have like a range of schools that I'm interested in. Like, frankly, that's to credential myself. And then how do I distinguish and delineate to where I'm not just credentialing myself so that I can join an elite group of people that like to think they're better than other people and trot on other people and have opportunities that don't trickle down, right? Or is there a way to say, hey, go to those places and put a middle finger up in the air and say like, fuck you guys, but also I'm benefiting from this, like fuck you guys, like I think I'm better than you all because you're the like materialistic, preppy like Harvard people or whatever it may be, and I think I'm better because I'm like from the streets. I'm and this is something where you can probably tell I am I'm an overthinker. But I think it's a lot better than being a non-thinker. And so I guess I want to also just kind of say, because like I try to be conscious of the fact that like that's a ridiculous opportunity that's almost unheard of that I feel very lucky to have. But it sure as hell doesn't make me I I want to say it doesn't make me more authoritative, although in some ways it does. It potentially can lend authority to my ability to speak on certain topics. But I never want to think that it makes me the
definitive
it centers
one.
me or makes me the definitive, the end all be all about anything, because that's, you got to have more humility than that. Epistemic humility is a term I really like.
Nice.
Epistemology being how do we know what we know, and then thinking, just because, I believe that I'm sitting here next to you, Benny Cosmic, and we're having this great conversation, doesn't mean that that's actually what's happening.
Well,
I have to know.
What is it? The baseline of your experience isn't the baseline for everyone else's.
Yeah. Real talk.
And like, even going back to the whole idea of being in a position of like whether or not you should say middle finger to what you're doing, and even though you're benefiting from it, is
right.
I'm a firm believer in pay attention if you're listening, because this is something you might want to know, is that you should, if you find yourself as a person of color who is not regularly in a field that you feel you worked hard to be in, you should be better than everyone in that field so that you can be in charge and then choose to delineate said field into whatever direction you see fit.
Right.
Just be better than them.
Right.
So good that they have to put you in charge. And you're like, actually, I do have the definitive knowledge, and this isn't working. I just did it this way so I can be in charge, and I'm going to go this way now.
Going back to being informed and consuming information, and I love what you said. A lot of today and yesterday for me was spent watching these Senate hearings, the Judiciary Committee with Ketanji Brown Jackson, the honorable judge on one of the Circuit Courts of Appeals, who has been nominated by Joe Biden to be the next Supreme Court justice, replacing Justice Breyer. And truly, a lot of it today was these white male senators like trying to establish some kind of critique that like this black woman is going to be weak on crime, and because she's sympathetic to criminals, because the Biden administration, one of them, Tom Cotton, said he's waging a war on criminal justice or some bullshit like that, and it's amazing how much there's spectacle from it now too, and I try to be like a critical consumer of that, like, okay, this is the stuff that's going to be the juiciest for the profits of these major media conglomerates, like owned by like Viacom and Disney, and I'm like not really into that as well. But it sucks that's still such a, because she's so intelligent and she has done every single thing needed and standing on the shoulders of giants to reach a point where she could be considered for the Supreme Court. It's so laughable that they like literally like are like, have you ever represented a terrorist before when you were, a public defender, and just like pulling out every dumb thing that they can.
Any Hail Mary they can at this point. Yeah. I mean,
which is like, it's just what you're saying is you have to be excellent.
Yeah. You have to, you just have to, like when you're in, when the odds are stacked against you, you have to work twice as hard to beat the odds. That's, the odds are going to try and beat you, so you have to beat them first. Then you can take the how you want to take it. But for me, that means that, no, I understand that it's not fair, the system that I'm working in, but that also isn't going to stop me from becoming the best in that system. And then when I get to the point of where I'm at that system and I can change it, then I'm going to. And I think that's where the disconnect happens, because a lot of people who get in the position of making changes get disconnected because they have everything they asked for. A lot of people get seduced by whatever it is that, they were working for, and they get caught up in that world. Like, for instance, a good example, I mean, this is a one-off situation, but it happens more times than not, is like, let's say you win the lottery, you're a person who's like, that person who always helps folks out, even when you don't have anything. You hit the lottery, those are usually the first people that change their name, their number, and everything, and don't talk to nobody anymore,
Yeah.
And that's like a very baseline example, but how many examples do we have of people getting into positions of power and then forgetting about the people they made promises to? So it's
Obama.
All of them. Like,
exactly.
Like I wish I can.
Pancho Villa.
Yeah, I wish I can single it out, but like
my understanding is Pancho Villa, and this is why okay, I don't need to pit them against each other, but Emiliano Zapata to me is a more appealing figure. But Pancho Villa fought, against the haciendados, the people that, owned these giant ranches, and they were the aristocratic class of Mexico. And he fought the working class revolution against them and was considered a really dynamic and exciting leader for justice. And then pretty much once he had kind of gotten, to elevated to that point and had done it long enough, he retired on a big hacienda himself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And yeah, that's like the phrasing I like to use is people don't want to break the table, they just want a better seat at it. That's all it is. They don't want to change the table. They don't want to make it wider. They don't want to make it more available for everyone. They just want a better seat. They want more portions on their plate.
Right.
And that's in my experience is it's 90% true most of the time. And I think it just takes one person to show that, like, hey, I have millions of dollars, but guess what? I'm still living off 20K so I can pay off all this other stuff. And that's a big ask of anybody who may have achieved that, Right. So it's, I don't know, it's like the sense of empathy and the sense of what I would do for myself and what I would hope somebody would have for me, and regardless of any situation, if I was the one who was given millions of dollars and then lost track, that I'd want somebody to be like, well, maybe he just doesn't have somebody in his corner saying, hey, you should probably go back and keep those promises. Because from what I've seen is, like, when people get rich, the people around them tend to just start caring about the money and not about the person. So I think that's another thing is just, that's the attachment to anything monetary or anything where you establish value outside of yourself. You tend to lose yourself into it because the value should come from what you bring and what you are.
You better lose yourself in the moment. Yeah. You own it. You better never let it go.
You only got one shot. Do not miss your chance to flow.
Can I make a slight lateral turn?
Yeah.
And ask you just about, I understand from my own singular experience what it's like to live here on the West Coast, where they interned Japanese people in World War II, and the historical legacies of, anti-Japanese and just anti-Asian racism and violence. I understand those things, and I think that I, have a lot of advantages, relatively speaking, to a lot of people, but also disadvantages to a lot of people in the Asian American community, which statistically has more wealth per capita than the white American community, for example. And it's a unique situation, but it's kind of like I could hardly imagine the day-to-day microaggressions and things that come from being an indigenous person living here in Eugene, Springfield, and also being somebody who is expressing yourself musically and artistically, where there's a pretty limited number of people doing that who maybe can share in some of those understandings that you have. So what's that been like?
It's whack.
Yeah,
to put it frank.
Yeah.
But to elaborate for those who want me to be more eloquent, I would say you don't
gotta be.
I know, I feel it. But I just like to be. And I should say it's for myself.
You have a lot of wisdom. Yeah. I really enjoy talking to you.
Thank you. Likewise. My first experience with first off, I didn't know it was brown or indigenous or different until I moved to Eugene. Let me just say that.
Fascinating.
Because San Bernardino, there's more brown
people
it
out here.
Yeah, there's literally for every 1,000 brown or black people, there was one white person where I live. So coming out here, it was the inverse of that. So when I came out, my first thing to one of my friends, Sean, who convinced me to move out, he's a 6-foot black dude, stalking, stands out. I was like, Sean, everyone's staring at us.
Right.
And then he was like, yeah, dude, look, they're all white people. They don't know what we look like. And I was like, that's scary as fuck.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah. And I was like, what should we do? Should I yell at them? And he was like, no, they'll just call the cops. And I was like, should I just go beat them up? Because, I'm 18 or, all I know is violence at this point. Right. And he's like, no, they'll just call the cops. And I was like, what the fuck? What if I need to call the cops? He's like, we don't call the cops out here. And that's not much different from where I grew up. But, it was more evident as to why. Is the cops are probably white.
It was almost like infrastructure that you had in place back home where people support one another. Here, you're on your own.
Yeah, well, it was weirder. It was like that, but with the inverse where people are nosy here. people are very nosy. Like, that's all it is. They don't care about you. They're just nosy. They don't care about you. They're curious. They're just curious. They just want to know because they're nosy. So, like, I just tell people to mind their own business now. Like, literally, I'm like, I'm childish when I want to be. And when it comes to people being nosy, I'm childish because someone will come up to me in public, no, right? And you're like, hey, sir, what are you doing there? I'm like, oh, I'm just minding my own business.
Right.
What are you doing? And then they get all awkward. I'm like, oh, it doesn't seem like you're minding yours. Have a great day. I'm very good at passive aggression with aggression, heavy passive aggression.
Gotta be able to be a little bit confrontational.
Yeah, like I have no problem with that. Like, so that was the first instance, and the second instance was like the first year I moved out here, 2015, Halloween. I went out, party hopping, house party hopping, frat parties, everything. Long story short, I ended up at a frat party where I was with a bunch of my friends, female friends. They had brought me, and I got kicked out for being the only dude. And I was like, this seems kind of weird, ladies. You want to go? And they were leaving. And as they were leaving with me, one of the guys started to fight with me. And then 4 of his, frat brothers proceeded to join in. And, like, I didn't know how to protect myself, and all I could say is luckily I had a weapon. I didn't use it, but I brandished it to be like, no, back up. You're not about to like beat me up. Like this isn't happening. And like if I hadn't though, I probably would have been beat to a pulp, because they're all big guys and probably would have got away with it.
Right.
And so that was the first year. That's year 1 living out here. And then year 2, it was I decided, all right, I'm not gonna talk to nobody. I'm just gonna put my nose to the grindstone and just work. But then I felt it in the corporate setting, where it was like, all right, well, if I'm not feeling it outside, I'm feeling it at the office, where it's like I realize I'm getting worse jobs than other people. I realize that I'm getting all the stuff no one else wants to do. I realize that I'm the first person to ask to do anything extra without any offer of additional compensation, things of that regard.
Crazy.
And to me, it was more so, it was stuff I already knew to expect because I'm not dumb and I've grew up way too quick. So where I know that the world is what it is. Right. So for me, it was more so, like adding gunpowder onto a powder keg. It's just adding more fuel to the fire. So then you get this concoction of like somebody who's angry at the world and doesn't really know how to do anything with this anger other than to turn it at music and or the world. And so then I started getting into like organizing protests and stuff because I thought yelling angrily was going to change it. It didn't. Yeah, it didn't, because what I've also noticed is like there's nothing wrong with collective protests, but if a bunch of people gather and say one thing, but there's no one person to go follow through on what the 1,000 people support you to go follow through on, then it's basically like a funnel, the way I see protests in opposition to our federal government, as an example, is I'll use modern culture as a great example for anyone watching. Is in the movie 300, when the 300 warriors had to battle 1 million Persian soldiers, instead of fighting them all on one, they funneled them into one little thing and took them out one at a time. Wow. So what happens when we protest and have thousands of people, but we only send one person to go get our demands? They get destroyed by 50 other people who are in Senate. It's just how it is. Very, very accurate. How much different would it be if those 1,000 people all occupied Senate, like, the people who stormed the Capitol did, but actually trying to push for something beneficial.
YouTube's gonna take this down.
I know, that's the problem. That's the problem.
I know that you're not saying that.
I'm just like, these are methods that could be utilized by other people. I'm not calling to that. I'm just saying, like,
it is disappointing, frankly, to see a lot of like
a fundamental break in how things are done. The fundamentals of how we have a checks and balances are broken because nepotism. If I want to boil it down, it's nepotism and favoritism, hands down.
Well, I would say that the people who have the interests of stop the steal, the bullshit steal, and all that, and actually, there's a lot we could say about this that I'm curious to talk about, especially with you coming to our area in 2015. Very interesting time. I would say that a lot of how they were able to get their interests met was just through having allied powerful oligarchs, essentially, like who are contributing campaign cash and lobbying efforts towards getting so many of the things that they wanted done. And then when they didn't get their way on this belligerent buffoon getting reelected, they had a tantrum. They had a tantrum.
That's exactly what it is. And even to this day, I still have the footage of the live news campaign because you can't find it anywhere on YouTube. So like I still have footage of that when it was on the news and they were like it was happening live and everyone was freaking out because no one knows of the storming of the Capitol.
Oh right,
like January 6th. That whole incident.
Well, I want to ask you about, because I grew up here. I moved here in 1995. Moved away. Feel free to spark that up.
Thank you.
I like to do it later in the episode so people have already they don't. If we're already smoking at the beginning,
these guys are stoners. It discredits their work. Well, let me let you know that this doesn't.
There's so much wonderful stuff about weed. Dude, if I could ever get sponsored or something, that'd be amazing. And I actually probably could if I actually really tried. But I don't put out the show consistently enough. But 2015 was an interesting time. There was a certain presidential candidate who came from entrenched power and tried to act like he was a populist and with the people. And it was also the same year that To Pimp a Butterfly came out. And All Right was a big, big anthem with Trayvon Martin protests and Tamir Rice and I think Eric Garner, Sandra Bland. And so basically I feel as though 2015 and 2020 were both, and 2016, like there were times here where basically what I'm saying is a lot of white people woke up to to racism, is particularly anti-black racism, and basically you got a lot of people like who could no longer like fully sweep it under the rug. There's still efforts to sweep it under the rug and deny and dismiss and discredit, but certainly being like, okay, we live in a world, we have to contend that this exists. People call it the original sin of our country sometimes, which I think is historically maybe not the most accurate when you look at what happened with the
we got genocide. There's murder.
Exactly. So I think that's interesting. And then just kind of having this collective like the quickest way to get to it is just to say performative wokeness, but to say that you can't deny that there's something here to be done. And so now what are you going to do? What are you going to share on Instagram? What are you going to, tell your cousin at Thanksgiving?
But what is
that
your
makes
virtue
you
signal?
A virtuous person?
Yeah,
exactly.
What virtue signal are you emitting? Yeah.
And to think like, I think that there was really interesting, some cool shit about Eugene that had the seeds of that, but prior to how that like really exploded, as it's like the feeling of a social obligation. I almost wish you could have been here before that, because it really has been such a big part of it. And I think of the summer of 2020, where frankly a lot of Antifa folks who are largely white really ended up pushing themselves into being some of the loudest people in Portland and in Eugene and throughout Oregon, to where I can think of several people who were the Wall of Moms, which was largely white, like who were able to really get some great publicity shots of themselves being on the quote unquote front lines of justice. Yeah. But I can hardly think of it. I can hardly think of any black activists who were who basically were able to use their experience and their articulation of their experience in order to affect change, who weren't ripped to shreds.
Exactly. I was about to say, because like at any point they would have just been taken down, or if they were like a big celebrity, they would have gotten their endorsements taken. Let's just look at the obvious one, Colin Kaepernick, or Kaepernick, however you pronounce his name.
Yeah.
But like,
maybe Seattle Seahawks will give him a chance, but
maybe, we'll but after like 3 or 4 years, it's been, so I think about that a lot. And just to kind of recall, back to what you were saying about a lot of people being woken up to like anti-blackness and racism, that's part of the lyrics for Nickel and Dime is you're late to the party, but at least you arrived. Because we lost a lot of soldiers gone ahead of their time, all because of government, nickel and dime.
Yeah.
You know, and that's just like, that's kind of the idea is that, the idea is that I don't care when you figure it out, but when you figure it out, do something about it. Like, me as an individual, what I decided to do is I give a voice to whoever wants to have a voice on the radio. You know, and if I need to punch a Nazi in the face, I'll punch a Nazi in the face. You know, like I got these scars for a reason. So like, there's a level of integrity I hold myself to that I expect from other people. And I know they say it's not wise to expect yourself from other people, but I say fuck that, because I'm good to people. And if I'm good to you all the time, then I expect good. And if you're not good to me, then we're going to have to figure it out, because there's going to be a compromise. There's going to be a compromise one way or another.
That's a big wisdom nugget. You know, if I had a team and I was doing clips on YouTube, that would be clipped.
It's like, that
shit would be clipped.
There's no compromise there. So it's like, if you're going to do something, be full ass. Don't half ass shit. If you're gonna be about it, be about it.
Bring both cheeks of the ass.
Yeah, man.
Come on.
If you know, I can't. You can turn the other cheek, but that other one's gonna be right there.
Yeah.
You know, like you only get two. That's like 2 warnings. You know, that's all I'm saying.
Absolutely.
But to tie back into that is
and then I want to hear about your influences.
My influences?
Yep.
Okay. Well, just to tie up this thought before we dive into that is just the we were talking about virtue signaling and everybody wanting to be that. Let's even tie that even further into the corporate aspect of it, where how many businesses you see Black Lives Matters in the window? First off, because they didn't want their window shattered. Secondly, because they want to make more money after the fact, you know?
But then in Springfield, you might get your window shattered for having it.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, that's another just divisive thing.
I'm not hating on Springfield, but I'm hating on racism that Springfield has allowed itself to be out for.
Pockets. Yeah, it has a lot of pockets of racism. Like, even coming out here, I was like, oh, boy. No, what I wanted to finish with was is that all of these things aren't... like, you know, whoever may be listening to this is all of these things are issues. Yes, they're ever present, but only because, you know, people give up. That's all it is.
Wow.
People give up or people die. Like, I don't know. I don't know if people have been paying attention.
Or I just think they allow themselves to be compromised so much that
you know,
that's effectively
like,
giving up.
There's got to be a compromise, but it can't be the people anymore. That's the thing. Is like, people have been compromising for so long, the system has to change, and everyone knows that. It's just like, it just takes one person who has the gall to be like, I'm gonna be this person to do this. But then it's like, the same person who wants to be that person shouldn't be that person because of hubris.
Exactly.
And like, hubris always kills the movement. So the idea is like, and I'm going to end with this on this topic is that, I feel like we're being conditioned to believe that, or socially engineered through media, where it's like, you know, the whole idea of revolution has to be one person who's leading the revolution, when really most revolutions are ran by pockets of mothers who were tired of their kids being exploited, or fathers tired of their wives being sold into slavery for whatever, you know, like in different regions, there's always been the same story of like, no, it was the people organizing without depending on the centralized government. And that's always what it is. That's always what it's going to be, until we stop like caring about stuff outside of ourselves.
There's an artist that I really want to get on the pod, but he's big, and he's a Canadian rapper named Shad. Ooh. And he is going to be playing in Portland in a few months, so I'd love to go to that show. But I really...
How do you spell it?
SHAD. I really recommend his album Tao, Tao. It's really good. Out of Touch is the first song, and it basically is about how society has been growing more and more out of touch with our roots, with our connections to one another, believing we can satiate our own selves and our needs just through our own like consumption, and being out of touch with one another. But there's another song on it called Black Averageness that I love, and it's basically just like, I love black excellence. It's excellent.
But why can't we just be average?
Exactly. Yeah. And it's so good in the video. He's like shooting hoops and missing, and so I really want to get him on the pod. He's got a line where he says something very similar to what you said, and it basically is part of his eloquent verse, but I'll just choose the part where he says, Only those who don't believe in power have the power that can lead to peace. Only the people who are not trying to do it to stack. Again, and I know that I have this in me as somebody who, I grew up with a chip on my shoulder a little bit, or I came to have one more because Japanese culture is very polite in public. Japanese culture is also kind of two-faced. Let's be real. They know it. There's a public face, and then there's the household and private, and you're very, very critical of your neighbor across the dinner table, the kotatsu, the dinner table across the newspaper. But then when they come and deliver you a nice pie,
you're polite, you're cordial.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I kind of like realized the limitations of being so kind in such a perceived and public and upfront way, because it does lead people, and sometimes probably out of like the sneaky Asian stereotype, it leads people to think that there's something underlying and belying that supposed kindness. And but I kind of I don't remember exactly where I'm going with it on this, but basically just like realizing over time that I actually think that I worried people when I became more direct too. People were like, what's going on? This isn't the Thomas we know. And it's like, well,
you changed.
Yeah.
You switched up.
Yeah.
We can't take advantage of you anymore. What's going on?
Well, like there were many times when, so I was diagnosed as bipolar. I don't know if I really fully accept it, but there was certainly a manic period in my life that I understand, like, okay, a lot of things contributed to that, and let's like dial those things back. Biggest one being stress. But, as Kanye has publicly gone through and shot himself in the foot in a lot of ways, but also publicly expressed his frustrations with how society reacts to mental health. There were many times when I felt a kinship with what he's going through, but it just at this point it's gotten like he needs to be put in timeout.
He needs time away.
Exactly.
Time away and treated.
But truly, like, that was the kind of guy that I was like, oh, wait a minute, like, a lot of how he got to where he got was by getting on the table and rapping. And it's like, maybe I can try to do that too. And so I'm really trying to push to so there it is. Okay, talking about the people, only those who don't believe in power are the ones who have the power that can lead to peace. I know that I want what's best for people beyond me, but I also have been very inculcated in a culture of needing to put myself first and seek certain elements of stability. That stability is like the baseline way to put it, but like also just like kind of like being well off, and I'm very uncomfortable with that. I've always felt way more kinship with people at drum circles downtown, and people who go to the open mic night for a free show and can't afford a beer. Like I've always felt a stronger kinship to those people than I have to the people that I've known through like school and people who have an inflated sense of their own importance. One thing I really believe, and I think is beautiful, is that, and this is just a very human-centric way of thinking of it, we each have the exact same size slice of the importance of humanity. There's like 7 billion plus of them, and you have one, and I have one, and they're the exact same size. And to me, that's beautiful. So, I don't know. Let's talk about your influences.
I guess music influences, I would say for this album, primarily I would say old school OutKast, like Dungeon Family type stuff.
Wow.
I was listening to a lot of that. And
those are the dudes who were all like in the basement, right?
Yeah, that's like CeeLo Green, Big Boy, Andre 3K, all them, that whole outfit. But that was before like
CeeLo Green has an album called The Soul Machine. I love that album.
Nice.
Yeah, Evening News is an amazing song.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, we'll bump it after this.
Hell yeah. And so I was listening to them, and then I was also listening to a lot of synthwave, a lot of like synthwave live stuff. But some notable artists that really caught my ear were Turbo Knight, They all have really weird, like, mechanical sounding names because, you know, it kind of goes with the vibe. But there's like Glitch 97, and then there's like Retro Cowboy, and like they make great music. But
nice.
And then of course lo-fi. Like a majority of the album ends up matriculating into a combination of boom bap and lo-fi. Those are like the two energies I was trying to get intermittently. But
there's a lot of great compatibility between those.
Yeah, right. There's I was listening to a lot of mashups, and that kind of gave me the idea. So
that's dope.
From there, the other influences as far as like lyrically, I get a lot of my lyricism I try to emulate anyway, I should say. Immortal Technique. He's like my favorite artist. Like I met him in his whole outfit. I got to see him at the Wow Hall. Dude, I met him in his whole outfit in Pomona. They signed my hat. Like him, fucking Chino XL, Poison Pen,
I got to see Chino XL at Lucky's.
Dude, all of them signed my hat and they shook my hand and everything.
Way, dude.
Yeah, dude. I was like 18. I waited for like 2 hours. It was so dope.
How many rappers are out there starting schools? I'll give a little respect to Chance the Rapper. When he was at his biggest, he worked a lot to try to he donated towards Chicago public schools. He was meeting with principals to try to advocate for students' interests. But Immortal Technique actually starting schools
in the Middle East, and then even in I think either Ecuador or somewhere in South America. Dang, I gotta look that up. But
wow,
that's what I'm saying. He is the truth. Like Immortal Technique's the truth, and that's why I try to emulate his lyricism, because he's just barred up, always tells a great story, and like everything you listen to, you hear it what he's saying, and there's like. He leaves room for interpretation as far as like the mental image, but the message, there's no miscommunication, which is great, because I'm a firm believer in this phrasing of if you leave room for interpretation, you leave room for misinterpretation. So that's why you have to say what you mean when you're really trying to communicate with someone, because nuance is what leads to chaos. And chaos is fine in a setting where, you know, you're trying to start something new or come up with something new, but it's not in a setting where you already have a rules of checks and balances in place.
Okay.
You know, so like, that's how I approach life, I guess.
Nice. Yeah. I respect it. Chaos is such a omnipresent component of our society nowadays. It seems like I think it's a little
force for capitalism.
It's a chaotic thing for me to think about buying non-existent digital real estate next to Snoop Dogg. To me, that feels very disruptive to some of the.
I'll sell it to you. I'm a realtor.
Oh yeah. No, but I'm talking about like metaverse.
NFT. Oh right.
Yeah, there's different sandbox like metaverses out there, and somebody paid a bunch of money in order to be Snoop Dogg's neighbor in one of them, and I just think that's such a fascinating and chaotic, just like. I don't know, but it also is indicative of the fact that, like, damn, there's so many people out here that can't even make it in this world, and homeboys are out here like investing in their
whole lives into the digital world. It's baffling to me. And it's
or Martin Shkreli buying that Wu-Tang album back in the day. I'm just like, damn, dude, we are not the same.
Yeah,
meaning you're a fuck.
I make that joke all the time where it's like, if that's why I don't have the money like of a billionaire, because I would use it for the right reasons. Like I was making the joke. I always make the joke at like work. I practice on my stand-up at work, but I make the joke.
That's badass. I kind of forgot that you were a stand-up guy from time to time.
I mean, I stand up for people, but I'm also funny sometimes, you know. but no, man. I just practice my material just because like they don't know I don't tell them I'm a comedian or anything. I like to be funny. I just drop the jokes, and if they work, they work. If not, I keep it pushing. But I make the joke because like, yeah, man, if I was a billionaire, I'll just like run for president, win because I'm a billionaire, and then I would just be like, hey, I want to go do this. I'm gonna rearrange all of the infrastructure so it's all energy renewal. And they're like, how are you gonna do it? You need to get the money. I'm like, no, I already paid for it. It's already. You don't need to vote on anything. It's out all of my pocket. And, you know, because at that point, that's really what you could do if you wanted to do it. And I know people think, oh, that's naive or whatever, but what are you can't spend all that money. You can't spend all that money before you die, and it's gonna be given to your fucking descendants, I guess. But like, they're probably worse than you because they didn't have to work for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's something to be said about fucking entitled Eric Trumps of the world. Like that's the first time I said that guy's last name on the show today. Yeah. But I have to call that dude out. Fascinating too. You know, that is an individual, that son, who was at like a fast food place, and somebody pretended that they were a fan and got a selfie with this guy Eric, right? And you could see in the selfie that he had taken, it might have been In-N-Out, I think. He had the plastic translucent water cup that you're supposed to get self-serve water, and instead he put lemonade in it. What a fascinating like idea about entitlement. Like
you got a fucking
you're
water
in a billionaire family with like an international business,
and you can't get a soda.
And you can't pay for your soda. You can't pay this. Yeah.
Oh wow.
It's just that level right there. Wow. You know. But yeah, dude. I like the idea of making it a little succinct. We've been on for about an hour and 15 minutes. But do you feel as though there's any things that are essential to your character, or ideas and things you want people to chew on that we haven't been able to address just yet?
Yeah. Said essential to my character. Yeah. Things people can chew on that we have yet to address.
I said what I said, goddammit.
And he meant it. I would say that everything you're looking for is within you, and the more you keep looking for it outside, the more pain you're going to bring yourself. Make it a point to know as much as you can, because the more you know, the easier life gets. That doesn't mean it's easy. It just means it gets easier. You know, it's less hard. And I would say that if you're looking for a sense of truth and you don't know what to believe in, you should probably just start from yourself. Believe in yourself, and then everything else will kind of follow through. It'll make sense eventually. And if it doesn't, we'll get another shot. I believe in reincarnation, PSA.
Nice. Reincarnation. Cool. Yeah. Well, seeking a sense of truth and feeling, I feel like having robust knowledge and feeling like you know what's going on in the world, it does feel grounding. And, you know, much has been said about essentially a rise in authoritarianism around the world. And authoritarianism is very, very compatible with mass ignorance and the desire to have somebody, first of all, scapegoating usually like people who have been historically marginalized and oppressed for one thing, but also just like, tell me what's going on. Tell me why my life isn't the way that I believed it would be. Okay, you've told me now, and now I'm going to listen to you. Like when you talked about like you know, knowledge, I was like kind of thinking about QAnon and just like people want to feel like they have, you know, this knowledge that of something that has been kept from them, because damn near everybody in late capitalism in America today accepts that like we had been sold something that was a little bit fluffier than the reality by our government, and that there's rampant corruption. Like if only there was a way to unite, I would say in general, like working class interests, and just interests of people who are disempowered, under a common set of ideals and actionable goals. I think that would be a beautiful thing, because this is a time that's ripe for it, because nobody's really content with the current status quo. You know what I mean? We have octogenarians running the country. Nancy Pelosi's like 81, 82. Chuck Schumer, Mitch McConnell, Joe Biden, Donald.
They're at least an average of like 60.
Oh, well over 70. Yeah. Well, all those people, the average is over
average
70.
Age, yeah.
And that's the thing is, you know, I would love to hear and find out that I have listeners in that age group here with the show. I think that'd be a beautiful thing. But in general, we regard, whether fair or not, that group of people as being like unemployable. Like we wouldn't pay them like $15 an hour to work at McDonald's, because the idea is that they're past their prime, they're inefficient, they're not.
And that was the retirement age for them would have been like 20 years ago.
And then climate change, frankly, is not going to affect them at all. So, or at least the brunt of it. So why is it that they exclusively the people making large scale decisions about what's going on with our country? That's an interesting thing, and I hope that we. But the other thing is too is like when it comes to representation and like, okay, like I'll cite Pete Buttigieg. Obviously you can tell I'm a political animal. I really follow this stuff. It's like my sports.
No, I'm enthralled. Continue,
right. He basically, his kind of thing is like, you look into him and he's like, okay, he's very much aligned with a lot of the same financial interests of that have really run things and Wall Street, and I don't think he would be much of a watchdog for those powerful interests. But his thing is like, I'm young and I'm gay, you know, I'm part of the LGBTQ plus community, and so that should be enough, right? You know, and it's like making it palatable. Like I want people who are just so authentic that it just drips off of them, and not just like saying like
they don't have to sell me on who they are. I already know who they are, and I'm willing to buy it.
Yeah, it's not vote for me because I'm a millennial and therefore I represent your interests.
It's like I want to vote for me because I've already done all these things to help these people. You know, I'm actually doing my job.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, like let's base it off of actual track record. How many things did you get past, and what are your turnover rates?
And that's that. Like I believe in ambition to some level, but it's the pure, raw, sheer, unadulterated, constant search for power and prestige that is embodied in somebody like him. You know, he speaks 7 languages, and I don't think that's bad. Obviously, he motivated himself to really learn, but like, and then you know, just everything he did, like going off into the military and then working for this investment firm or big financial firm in order to you know, enrich his life, and then going back to the small town where he grew up and then becoming mayor, and like just all of it is very, to me, it's the example of, and I watched the documentary about him in particular, like he very robotic towards his partner, his husband Chasten. Like there's this one part where like the campaign trail was really brutal, and so they're at a diner and Chasten is like, he's like, and I might even put this. Bad. He's like exactly. His head is down. He's exhausted, and then Pete just walks up like with the sandwich or whatever, and just sits there, and just starts eating it, like not caring at all that like his partner's like and then he like put his hand on his partner's hand for like a little bit as like to offer a little bit of consolation, but it's like, I don't know. It reminds me of that Shad album again. Just like we're so out of touch with one another. We've so, I feel like it's strongly incentivized to erect more distance between. I don't have any strong examples, but like there's just more money in building walls than there is in interest in. There's not much reward for tearing down boundaries. You know, there's a lot more financial reward for putting them up. I don't know.
Well, it's easier to control one person at a time.
Yeah.
You know, if they're all isolated, it's easier to control people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I love stuff that makes the real elite oligarchs of this country and world nervous. I love stuff that makes them nervous and that challenges what whether or not they're going to be able to, because it's not just about continuing to be well off. It's about a never-ending desire to dominate more. And I'm not talking about individuals, but like I think that collectively, like we have affirmed the society and been okay enough with the society that just says that that's an ideal. That is an ideal, is to just like constantly look up for, like, you know, I've got this TV. I love this TV, but if my neighbor had a bigger one, I would want a bigger one because I live in America, and you know,
I get what you're saying. Yeah,
you know what I mean. And it's weird because
social
this
conditioning
TV should be the shit. You know, I love this TV. So and so as I get to the end of each episode, I'm trying to. It's called Broken Class, and so let's talk about basically something in society that you believe. And there could be a lot of things, but something in society that you feel is broken, and then what we can really do to try to get to where we can fix it. Some people think, you know, it's not, the system isn't broken, it's working exactly as it's designed. So maybe I don't know.
Well, I mean, yeah, but that doesn't mean we can't like change it. I mean, the way I say it, a tool is how you use it. A knife could kill somebody, but it can also make a meal, you know? So, the thing that I did when I was 16 is I was part of this thing called the 21st Century Learner Consortium in Southern California, where they had me go around and interview a group of 4 different kids of every age group from 9 to 12th grade for all the schools in my district, and it was like 8 schools. So I ended up doing 32 interviews of these kids and asking them the same 4 questions. What it was they enjoyed about school, how they learn things best, how they feel about tests, and what they wanted to learn about in school. And all of them had crazy awesome answers. And it was probably like 2 hours worth of footage. I had to condense it down to 15 minutes.
That's hard.
Yeah, well, they didn't. Yeah, they had me do all that for no reason, because essentially what it came down to was we did this panel of all the kids that they liked the responses of the most, and got them there to answer questions for superintendents and people who were evaluating the school for the state. Wow. And so all of these yes men, essentially the children, were, put to be yes men, like, I like my school is the best, kind of like scripting.
Wow, they took advantage of these kids.
Yeah. So, and me being the person I am, I did it because I got to get out of school. I was always like, I did all the school stuff so that I would be the one you would least expect to do the bad stuff. That was essentially my MO in high school. So like, I was planning all the events, and I was also planning all the, after parties. Like, that was me. So like, I was doing this, and eventually they got to me. I was the last person that they would ask. They essentially went across the dais and asked everybody their own line of questioning. And the whole idea of this consortium was to introduce Common Core learning standards as opposed to STAR testing that they had been doing prior.
Gotcha.
So Common Core, for those unfamiliar, is, and this is in practice, it doesn't actually work, it's just in theory, is the idea of Common Core was to implement a line of questioning that made the children show their work, not only in like math problems where you had to write out your formulas in arithmetic, but also in literature, but in science as well, where you would have to fully explain everything. Like basically every question was open-ended, but there was a set criteria of where their verbiage had to be, essentially. So that's just a rigged system. You're basically teaching kids what to say. Outside looking in of what I know now as an individual, but at that time as a 16-year-old kid who was just videotaping this stuff for the adults, they got to me and I had started realizing that this was all bullshit. And so I was kind of mad because I had just spent like a lot of my time as just me as a person putting all this work into something I thought mattered, and then all these adults just pretty much shit on it, and they shit on it like they thought an adult made it, and then they found out I made it and they were all nice to me after the event, right?
Wow.
So I give you all this preface and context to say this in response, because this is the same answer that I had given them.
Beautiful.
Is they asked me, Mr. My real name, what is it that you think is wrong with the education system? And I just looked at them and I said, oh, can I be honest? And they were like, we'd love for you to be. And I was like, okay. And then all my teachers looked at me like, don't say any cuss words. And I was like, so I was like, all right, I'll be smart about this. And my answer is that we need, at the end of the day, if we take everything away, let's say the world ends tomorrow and all we have is teachers to teach us stuff. The problem is that there's too many people and not enough teachers. And the reason that there's not enough teachers is because they don't get paid enough. And the reason they don't get paid enough is because we don't prioritize education. And the reason we don't prioritize education is because we don't have smart enough people to make that decision, because we don't prioritize education. So
that was a big feedback loop.
Yeah, exactly. So they understood where I was going with this. And then my answer was this.
And then you talked about isolation making people easy to control. The lack of education makes them incredibly easy to control.
Exactly. So then my follow-up to that was, I was like, so my solution is we can, and I have a couple different answers to this, where I feel a more effective means of learning or teaching children is by matching them up by personality types.
Cool.
So you know how you can do like...
Rather than like the strict age grades?
Yeah, well, no. So like we'd still keep them the same age range, that way they're around kids of their age group, not to age them up too quick. And have them actually enjoy their age range where they're at. But we would have each kid take like a personality test before getting assigned a teacher, and then have the teachers take personality tests, like INFJ, those kind of, tests, right? Like Tony Robinson does a lot of that kind of stuff too. But have something similar to that regard where we can match them up. And what we would do is we would have like every day you'd have them work with the teacher of different personality types so that they get used to dealing with different personality types and solving the same kind of problems, so that you get them used to solving problems under any circumstance. And then from there, you're also teaching them how to deal with different people, because let's say you're going to learn most from the teacher you get along with, because that's just if they learn the way you learn, or they understand how you work, because that's just how they are, their personality, you guys are going to click, you're going to learn more. And then you're going to probably have your most opposition against, a teacher who you clash with, like ideologically or just like personality wise, you just clash, because people do that. So what I would say is we can counteract where like you would have a student who is really good at math with a teacher that they clash with, because then it would balance itself out where even if they clash with that personality, they'd still be able to do that work. But all of this would be prefaced with, this is what we're doing. Like, I think part of the reason that education doesn't work is because we don't explain to kids why they're learning what they're learning. The biggest question, in any classroom, exactly. The biggest question in any classroom is, how is this going to matter to us? Why are we learning this? And no teacher has the answer other than regurgitated facts.
I was talking to Just Joey, my homie, like in 2019 on the podcast, and we basically talked about math education and like, why should you learn this? Well, it's because it's on the unit test. Maybe a better answer would be, why should you learn this? Probably because it's the fundamental language of the world across cultures and languages. And it explains basically at the root of like physics and chemistry and biology, everything that's going on. And so you might want to have a little bit of dexterity with that. And not just, well, the state wants you to have algebra 2 to get this, like, to get into school. It is really something. There's a lot of thought that's gone into your idea about matching kids with like the personalities of their peers and with teachers, and playing with that kinship and also with that friction that can come from difference. There's a lot of good ideas there. And I think of American schools and American public school districts often as graveyards of good ideas. Yeah. Truly. And I think that's frustrating. One thing about our Eugene School District 4J here, how much do you know about it? Do you pay much attention? I know. I'm a graduate of it.
That they have like a higher rate of dropouts than a lot of parts of the country.
Yeah. And in Oregon too, like for many, many years, we were like 49th, 48th in graduation rate in 4 years. Like, there are a lot of rural school districts that are really struggling and not being resourced well enough. The Student Success Act is hopefully the implementation of that continues to like ameliorate some of those issues. But I'll tell you this much, dude. One of the things that structurally I think is concerning, right, is like, okay, if you have a legislative body, which is essentially what the Eugene School District Board of Directors is, a school board, it's 7 people. It's a legislative body, essentially. They create and enact policy on behalf of all the schools that they serve. Most legislative bodies, people send a representative who is similar to them and similar to their interests. So, for example, for all of their flaws, the Eugene City Council, the city is divided into 8 wards. One of them is Whitaker and River Roadish a little bit. One of them is Cal Young, so it's the most conservative one typically. One of them is like the South Eugene South Hills, so it's like progressive but kind of like rich people. Bethel has their own like industrial and like more and more low income interests, and so basically each ward will elect a person who lives in that ward who represents what that ward and that community of town wants. They come together as 8 people from those 8 wards. They hash it out and try to enact policy. So that's ostensibly how Congress works. Gerrymandering is a big issue, but basically like, okay, people from Willamette Valley, Oregon, they're going to send their Peter DeFazio. The state of Oregon is going to send their Ron Wyden and their Jeff Merkley. And here's one of the things that makes it, I think, hard to create fundamental change on the school board here in Eugene. there's a lot of issues. For one, there's an Oregon state law that says they can't be compensated for their work. So you only are going to get people who are financially very well established. That's already the case because it's hard to run a campaign when you don't have any money, you know. Mm-hmm. But the point I'm really getting to is that each member of the Eugene School Board is elected citywide. So they have every 2 years, they're like, okay, position 1, 2, and 7 are open. And doesn't matter where you live in the city, which is a big, wide, somewhat diverse city in many ways, you have to be elected by the whole city. That is always going to lead to the people who don't rock the boat, you know, because once you do the whole city's voting population, the city's voting population is much more conservative, obviously, than the city's general population. I don't think it's that hard to understand that. It's like people who are, they can get the time off work and we've got vote by mail and blah, blah, blah. But like the people who are most likely to vote are people who have more structural power and more to lose within the system because they have more wealth, you know, and more, they're typically older and they're typically like parents. And so that's just one of those things. So like, okay, for example, in general, I'm a fan of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and Rashida Tlaib and other progressive Congress people that are out there. But they largely couldn't be senators because when you're the senator, you have to represent your whole state. So Tlaib would have to get elected by all of Michigan. Cortez would have to get elected by all of the state of New York. And so basically just like, at least they're able to have a voice because of the fact that like their community elected them. We don't really have that in our school board. You have to be essentially approved by the whole town, which kind of means by the people who hold power. And so that's just one little thing.
Yeah,
I took over on that soapbox. I really did.
No, it's okay. There's room on it. It's not even a box. It's like a soap stage.
It's like the door at the end of Titanic that Jack Dawson and
everyone could be on it. There's room. We could fit like 2 other people. We're not gonna die in this ice
she
cold
just
water.
died alone. He did. Jack Dawson drowned because they believed that there was only room for her on that piece of wood, but. I don't know, dog. There was some room.
It was the 1920s. They didn't have math yet. They didn't have public school, dude. It was privatized. It was privatized.
Word up. Well, it's been such a pleasure, man. Let's have you back on sometime.
Man, it's been fun.
It'd be fun to have like you, me, Julian, or you, me, M5, and Julian. Like we would just chop it up for hours.
Excited. Yeah, we should do that.
Respect.
We'll figure it out. We'll like coordinate. We'll reach out to them, see what's happening. You guys hear that? If you're watching this, we're gonna reach out to you. And if we already reached out to you, then this is past me saying, "Got you, mother."
I haven't typically done this part 2, but like a shout out to my friend Patty Rose, who hosts the Spent the Rant podcast.
Oh, nice.
He'll end every episode with a song. Typically, I don't do it. I just like to end it, boom, and then make you think about what you're going to consume next, instead of just like, I don't know, handing it to you, I suppose. But I'm such a big fan, truly, and I've only listened to it a couple times, but of your album Good Vibes Hood Tribes. Even when you're talking a little bit about the synesthesia adjacent stuff with it, like I think the artwork for it is beautiful and really helps. It really helps push people to have their own sensory responses to what the music is doing.
I was
pick a song though, you know. Let's play it to write out the episode
right now. Okay, yeah. Let's see. What we got?
Take a look at what you got on that shit, man. Because you've been doing music for a while, and I'm really just glad to see. So I got the list right here, bro.
Oh, hell yeah.
Shadowboxing, Fast Lane, Nickel and Dime, Redskin Bandit, Close to the Pulse Freestyle. Close to the Pulse Freestyle is awesome, dude.
Thank you.
That's so dope, and it's a legit freestyle, and it's on the record, and it sounds great. Forbidden Fruit, Don't You Worry, Take Your Time, and Wishful Thinking.
Honestly,
it clocks in at under 29 minutes, the whole project, y'all. Check that shit out.
Just under 30 minutes, less than your TV show.
I love it.
Wishful Thinking is the one I enjoy.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Until next time, homie. Thanks, everybody. Here's Wishful Thinking by Benny Cosby.
I could see what's on your mind. Wishful thinking of mine, I know. Wish you love from afar, like stars in the sky. Riding down the road trying to find your place. Nothing ain't good when you ride so plain. Had to get it from the mud, don't love shiny things. Never been impressed by the lies they speak. People always wanting more cause they don't feel like enough. But I've been blowing smoke, trying to feel something more. I just wanna live, I don't worry about the cost. I just wish people saw the world for what it was, yeah. I wish you would see through so I could see what's on your mind. Wishful thinking of mine, I know. Wish you love from afar, like stars in the sky. So realize your worth and see what you become. When you're ready, it's easy to feel sure. But remember that you're never giving up. Yeah, you're never giving up.